Hello, welcome to another Random Code stream. Today I'm going to be working on a couple of hopefully small issues in this serializer that I've been working on. It's a custom serializer for a framework called CSLA that has been around for literally decades. And the serialization part of the framework is something that I've done a little bit of work on in the past, trying to get it a little bit more performant. And with source generators and C#, I thought, could I make a, because the serialization engine is pluggable, I thought, could I make a custom implementation that would be faster and take less memory? And the answer is yes, you can do it. So that's what this is. I was looking through the code a day or two ago, and I found a couple things that I think can be addressed and make it a little bit cleaner. Let me get my music going here so that we have something in the background. One of the things I did, because I found out that some of the types did not work as expected, so now I have, for a lot of the value types, I think all of them that are supported in the engine now have tests around them. Not just the tests in terms of, does it produce code that compiles, but then there's also what I call integration tests. And actually I should rename this project to be, well, that's fine, leave it the way it is. But that these now also have tests that actually test the type, both nullable and non-nullable, and make sure that it works correctly. So that's all there. The first thing, and I already have a branch out here for this, is that as I was going through the code, I discovered that there is, if I go back up to the analysis project, let me try to find all the cases for this. There's essentially, I think, these are the ones that use it. There are 3 implementations of this. There's this get read operation. All of them take a type reference model, and all of them essentially do the same thing, which is there's 3 types here. For GUID decimal time span and date time offset. GUID decimal time span. GUID decimal times. If you keep moving back and forth between these, let me try to get this up. Actually, let me get this up. So if I'm switching back and forth between the screens, hold on, I'll look at your message in just a second. There. So do that, and then let's see if we can get that to be there. That's good enough. So I think each of these are exactly the same, except this one in the builder helpers will do a read custom on this in terms of, if it's not one of these types, it's not a special type, then it'll go through the special types, and then we'll say if it's a Boolean, read Boolean, char, read char, and so on. So these two do not. They don't do the same thing. They almost do exactly the same thing, except in these cases it says throw an implementation, which does not make sense. They shouldn't do that. In fact, if I look, and this isn't a complete proof, but if I look in the tests, I never get that. Now, I may never get that because I may run into a type that, I don't know if I have a test that does a custom. I should. There should be a... Yeah, there's the read custom. And I think that's the one that we want. So let me read this message. Yeah, I know, I'm getting there, Electron. I've started uploading clips of famous YouTubers on this channel. What do you think about it? On which channel? Yours? I don't know which channel you're referring to. Anyway, so I think what we want is this one. Yes, okay. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that later. So, builder helpers. We probably don't even want these. So, now I'm going to also be in full disclosure. Somebody did pull requests on the two things I'm doing today, at least one of them. And I'm kind of like, I've been really thankful that somebody's gone in and done some work, especially with some of these value types that didn't have tests around them, that did have issues, and fixing a couple things. That's been great. But I've had to kind of put the brakes on it because it's like, if you're going to do some work for an open source project, I kind of think what you want to do is at least don't submit a PR for an issue unless, you know, there's kind of a ownership of it. Because you don't want 3 or 5 or 10 people to go into the same issue and make a PR for it, because that's just duplicated work. You know, say, hey, I think I can take this. You mind if I do a PR on it? You know, just be a good citizen of the world. So I think one of these is not actually being used. When briefly looked at the PR, but I close it. I'm like, you know, I also need to get my GitHub folders and all my repos updated with a whole bunch of templates. You know, contributing guidelines, an issue template, a PR template, and basically say, you know, like in the PR template, have you asked the owner of this repository to make a PR for this issue? I'm all for that help, but again, I think there has to be a little bit of, you know, hey, is it cool if I take this? Yeah, go ahead, perfectly. You know, this one I was like, I had these issues in here, and I put them in here because I was going to do a stream this morning doing them. So I was kind of like, don't do that. What I really should have done also is assign them to myself and say I'm working on these, you know. So that's a bit of a fault of my own as well. But that's kind of the point, is if you want to do something, assign yourself or ask to be assigned to it, and then people can do that work. So anyway, this is the one we want. Is this even being called anywhere? No. So this one can actually just fully go away. Okay. And what about this one? It's not being used anywhere either. So this is what's called an easy refactoring. Nobody was using it. And this is actually better because, let me run all the tests now just to make sure that we don't have a problem. But we shouldn't. If those weren't being referenced anywhere, then it shouldn't have changed any test behavior. And survey says, yep. All right. And this is actually good. Let me see if get. To do. This can probably go away. Why? It's being used in a lot of spots. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. This is one of those things where and this is being used in 3 spots. Yeah. Where I put in a to-do and I don't explain well enough why I think it can go away. And so then then I question myself, and I'm just going to delete this because it's not helpful. I don't know why I put that in there. But, removed 2 methods that weren't being used. Time for a merge. All right, so give me a moment where I will do some little dancing here. Let's merge that in. Push it. And then we can delete that. So again, these are small things. This today is kind of I don't want to say it's an off day for me, but where I work, they're having this big all-company meeting. They actually rent out an entire arena. And, you know, the company I work for is huge. It's like tens of thousands of people. So it's in Detroit, and it's Rocket Mortgage, you know. And so all afternoon, there's this big all-company meeting, and they have, you know, big presentations and people speaking and all this stuff. Well, remote people, we watch it at home. So that's, you know, that's everybody's focus today is that meeting. So I'll be watching that in the afternoon. And I figured, well, occasionally when you work at companies, sometimes they have you do these trainings internally for whatever reason. And there's one that came up that I've got to do. So I'm going to do that this morning. And so it's kind of, honestly, it's like, it's not an off day, but it's not a day where I'm going to be doing a lot of technical stuff, if that makes sense. So it is what it is. How many programming languages do you know, and what programming languages do you like to code in the most? How many do I know? Know well or kind of know. I mean, there's kind of I know of a lot of languages, but I'd say the ones that I've programmed in, it doesn't mean I've touched them in a while. It may have been decades since I touched them. I did C in grad school because that's what I did my master's thesis in, but I haven't literally done any C since then. I did a little C++ in around 2000 for one project. But that was it. Most of my career started with Visual Basic, and I did that for probably 5-6 years-ish, and then once .NET came around, that started to rapidly fade. So it became VB.NET, but there became this pretty swift switch to C#, and that's where I've really been spending most of my time with. And that's probably the language that I know best is C#. Excuse me. I did a lot of SQL when I started, but I can't remember the last time I wrote a SQL query by hand. Just haven't had the need to do that. I've done a little bit of TypeScript here and there, nothing serious. I did a fair amount of JavaScript for like 5 years. That was between like 2001 and 2 to probably like 2008. So that was way before the popularity of JavaScript really took off. And so there was no libraries, there's no stuff, but I had to build these dynamic websites. And so I learned a lot about how you can just use raw JavaScript to do a lot of interesting things. Have you ever tried to make a game? Yeah. In fact, if you look in my GitHub account, you'll see that there's a game out there called Quixo, Quixo. It is not anything fantastic. It's not anything like a game, but there's a board game called Quixo, and so I wanted to create a game of it that also had an engine that used min-max to figure out the best move. I've never been able to beat it, by the way. I've never been able to beat my own engine. But that was just it's a simple app that was written in WinForms. I just wanted to see what it was like, but nothing real serious. I've never done anything with video games. So anyway, so we got this one done. So that's cool. So we can close that issue. And I guess I should have put in here in the change log that remove methods that were no longer used. Just because it's probably, I mean, this is probably being really picky, but, you know, this is all the things that changed. So this is stuff that did change. Let's see what else. So there's that one. So that one's done. And now add more value type support. So this one is a little bit arbitrary, but there are some types in .NET that have to deal with numerics that I don't think a lot of people know about, because they weren't there in .NET to start with 1.0. They've been added, I think, later on after that. And like some of these, well, one of them, big integer, is one that I think might be known about a little bit more. It's an arbitrarily sized integer type. So you can have a integer of thousands of digits, and that's what big integer is for. There's int 128 and uint 128. Those are 128-bit integer numbers. And then there's half. This is a floating point number that's like half of a single. And none of these have any like keywords, aliases in C#. So like a single type, the big S single, is actually a float in C#. They're exactly the same type. It's just an alias. There are no aliases for these, so you have to use them as types themselves. So I'm like, okay, they are there, but I kind of wanted to see, could I get them into the serialization engine proper? As you saw here, there was a hint of this. If I go back up to the builders, there's this read custom, and I'm not going to get into the code to show this right now, but what that does is if you register support for a specific type, you can do that with my serialization engine. So you can say, if I run into a type called bar, you know, or person that isn't a business object in CSLA proper, isn't a value type, and isn't any of these things, can I serialize this? And maybe I have a strategy to take it and put it into byte parts, and then I can put it into a serialization stream and take it out. And so if we get down to the point where we don't know what the type is, we're just going to punt and we're going to say read custom, in the hope that this type has been registered. If it isn't, then you'll get an exception, and then you'll have to register that type yourself. You gave up very quickly because the game engine, I was trying to make the game and use a C++, and it's one of the hardest. Yeah, C++ is definitely not an easy language to use. That's why I think you've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, systems programming languages pop up more often. There was D that was created years and years ago as trying to make a more friendlier C++. And then you've seen things like Zig, Odin, Rust, Jai, which is Jonathan Blow's language, which I don't think is released yet. So, but all these different kinds of languages that are supposed to give you low-level support, but make it easier and saner to use. So, and to be fair, C++ has had some modernization in recent history, but it's still C++. So, yeah. All right. So anyway, what I want to do here is basically put in 3 types and see if I can get them to be saved, get them to actually work. And so, how can I download your game? Hold on, let me see if I can find that. It's not downloadable. It's not like it was just a fun thing for me to create. Um, and so you can get the code here. This is just the WinForms version of it, so you can just download it, build it, and and give it a whirl. It's pretty simple. And then there's actually a 3D version of it that's hasn't had any work in it for a long time. This was something that a friend of mine, Mike Hodnick, and I created, and we did it as a presentation to Twin Cities Code Camp. It was an event around the Twin Cities area that I was running for quite a while, and we decided to make a 3D version of this game. And so this was kind of showing how you, at the time, using WPF and doing some 3D things in WPF to like make the game go in 3 directions, not 2. And then, so he did the UI portion, I did the back end and changing it to how do you handle this in 3D type of thing. So, but those are the places you can go and get that stuff. Anyway, back to the task at hand. So, first thing we want to do is how do we handle these types? You know, how do we actually see if we can get well, hold on, let me just commit update to changelog, because we should always be making branches. So let's do that. All right, so what I'm going to do here is we're first just going to do some playing. And I thought I could do this in .NET Lab. .NET Lab is good, but sometimes just the pure interactivity of Visual Studio, let me make this a little bit bigger, helps to find out how to do stuff. So like if I have half, let's actually, no, let's just start with half. Value is equal to new half. Can we do, I forget how you actually, we'll say parse 3.14. Okay. And let me comment this up because I don't want that running. And then, oh, because we can just say var there now. Okay, so let's say console write line, just value. Is that okay? So now if I run this, well, and switch my keyboard over so I'm not launching the start menu. 3.14. Yippee. Okay. But what I want to see is there a way to get this as a byte, a stream of bytes? And I don't know if you can. I mean, I could take the string and then parse that back in on the other side, but that's a little... And I don't want to cast it. That doesn't actually help. So let's look up .NET half data type. So it occupies 16 bits, or 2 bytes. I'm going to look up if somebody's already done that. Oh, so you can write it directly to a binary writer? Oh, well, that actually would make things pretty simple. Oh, there is a half for it for binary writer. I didn't know that. Well, then what about the other side? Oh, there's a read half. Okay, well, that should be simple. Okay, so it should be famous last words, right? So, first thing we're going to do is write a test. Okay, so there should be a read half and a write. And then we want that. Now, none of this is going to work just yet. It's going to fail because we don't have the support built into it just yet. But if we come into here, not this. If we go in the builder helpers here, now we should be able to say, because there is no special type half. See? So we're going to have to do something like put it in as one of these special cases. And we say here, if it's system.half, then we can say here, context reader.read half. Except without that. There. Now, the problem is on the right side. We have these get read operations, but we don't have... you gotta speak English. Sorry, I don't know what you're saying. Well, this should be okay, except here we want to... This is a little facetious because we are doing value types here for all the special things that we're doing. So I guess, as we've noticed, it can be a system.half, right? If we look at this, system.half, yeah, so that's right. And it has a method on the writer already that will take it. So that should just work. And then we got an ugly space there. My goodness, what's wrong with us? So everything should just run? And it fails. Okay, why did it fail? Oh, that's right. Yeah. It's going to put global... Right. Yes. Okay. I don't even know my own code. Do you know Bangladesh? No. Nope. Okay, I think that should get it now. Yep. All right, so now we should be able to write a integration test using a half. I don't know any other languages other than English. I took Spanish for 2 years in high school, which is a long time ago, and that really didn't teach me anything about Spanish. As I say, no hablo español. I really know nothing about it. So yeah, culture. Okay, and then we want to actually no, we want to I've also tried. Do you know Kristen? No, I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I should learn Spanish just because we have a decent amount of Americans that speak Spanish that should stay in America and not be deported. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? I have every right to be in this country, and learning Spanish would help. You know, I actually have toyed with learning Swedish, but I've just been distracted with other things, and I've never just sat down and say, okay, have a plan to study the language so that I learn it. Wait, what? Oh, jeez. My coffee cup was on my keyboard. I was like, what are you doing? My goodness. That was hilarious. I think some of these tests, too, I'm not always being consistent. I always want them to be equal to what the original value is, but sometimes I say it's equal to, like, 3 if it's an integer. But it should be equal to that, what it's there. Okay. Now, if we run all the tests... Hey, folks in chat, let's be cool. Okay. I have enough to be stressed out about and watching chat. Everybody just be cool. All right. Added half type support. So that's a third of the equation. Now we want to do an int 128 and then a uint will fall right through, I think. So if I come down here and I say int 128 parse, can I? Doesn't really matter what this is, right? Now, here's the fun part. There is no, as you're seeing here, for whatever reason, the binary writer has support for the half type. I mean, we saw that before because I could literally pass it in and it worked just fine. There. But what I think, well, maybe we'll have to see here. Can cast or cast. That doesn't help. I was hoping there was a way to get its constituent parts. Oh no, I don't want to write it. Just comment it out for now. So we get some big number there. Yippee. All right, so back to the search. .NET 1 int 128 serial. Yeah, I don't want to do JSON serialization. It has too long values. That's interesting. You can use a stack alloc. I mean, this would work. It's funny that this is just a doing it as JSON. It's like, no. This one's a little bit more confusing to look at, and then we'd also have to do the high and the low, and then do all this shifting. I mean, if it works, it works, but it's we'd have to read oh, that's the most useless article I've ever seen in my life. iComparable iFormatter. How about I give me bytes? That would be really helpful. Yeah, I don't want. I do want to get its. Well, it has a get byte count, really. It's the radix. That doesn't really help. Those are all the operators. I'm trying to see if there's any way to just pull out the easily. Yeah, I don't want to parse. I just want the... I just want the bits. That's all I want. The bits and the bytes. Okay, so these are explicit. Jason, you know you can play with YouTube videos and fork speed. I know about others, but this feature can be most one day. Well, I knew you could change the speed of videos. I didn't know they actually added a 4 times. I don't know, at some point, I guess it depends on the person. When does it actually become unrecognizable as the language you're trying to listen to? So you could do this. That would read it. But then we'd have to know if it's signed or not. And what happens if we now have to store whether it was signed? That kind of stinks. A big integer would be simpler to do. And I'm just looking at my time. As just a quick thing here, if I say something like this, and then we say writer.write buffer. Now, actually, when we write an array to CSlaGenerator, we have to use, there's two extension methods I have, because when we want to read it out, we don't know what the length of it is. That's something that's always kind of amazed me about the serialization parts of things, because it's like it doesn't, like when I say I want to read an array out of something, like if I say var reader is equal to new binary reader, and let's just give it the memory stream. I don't really care. Okay. And I say reader.read bytes, you'll see here that, well, you have to know how many are there. Okay, so I'd have to say 16. And then I'll get an array of 16 bytes, which is fine. But I have to know that in the stream. So there is a helper method that I have that writes the size of the array first, then writes the content. So then when I'm reading an array, I read that first count value, and then I use that to say how many am I actually reading out. And then so to do the read, we're going to have to basically create using var reader to go to the new binary reader. And then we want to say here, so we move the position. Now we want to say var int value content, whatever, I don't care, is from the reader read and bytes 16. Okay, we'll just call this data. Whoops. Whoops, var. Come on, Jason. And so now if we say console write line new value, does this all work? Looks like the same number to me. So we could have, and I think this won't matter if I say int or uint. It should be the same. I mean, that's a positive number, but the point is that a uint is also, it's the same format in terms of bytes, I think. It's still 16 bytes in length, And so we don't care about what bit you're using for significant or not significant or signed or unsigned. We just want it to be like we have to do the cast here the same, but this could be a write int 128 and write uint 128, and then we could have a read int 128 and read uint 128. Remember to change the cast, because that is one thing we'll have to do here, is make sure that when we do the cast, is that we're casting it. You know what? Actually, let's see if it changes at all. If Copilot. Oh. Well, bite me. Okay. Speaking of bites. So. God, how funny that I got a great answer for int 128, but not uint. And why? I don't give a crap about your library. There are types like this that are exactly in the framework. So what do I care about your types? Right? Now, again, I would love to do something that's a little bit if we say uint here, let's just make sure. If I say here uint 128 minus 3 through 3. Oh, I won't cast that, huh? Fine. uint 128 parse. Yes, infiltrating culture. Now what does it do? Yeah. I was afraid of that. So it doesn't work. Actually, looking at this implementation, why are we doing that? Oh, well, okay, sorry. Yeah, it still is not right. But what I'm realizing by looking at this is like, why are we... They're U-longs. Okay, fine. So why don't we just parse them as that? This is getting messy. It feels like there should be a cleaner way to do this. I mean, a way to punt on this is just to say, you know what? Yeah, too bad it doesn't have support in there. I think what I'm going to do is punt on that for now. Okay. Because I'm not confident in putting something in just yet for this. For a big integer, that's different because new big integer. Why do you get that out of there? We can put in a long or you enter a long, it doesn't matter. Okay, so if we say 4444 here, and I say two byte array. So that just gets everything as a byte array. Okay. And then I can also say new big integer. And I believe there is, well, there's a read-only span, but there should be, yeah. And so you can just, so I think a big integer, to finish the stream out, let's do the big integer because that's going to be simpler. And then I can look at the int 128 and uint 128 parsing for serialization. So back to here. To do a business helper here, what we're going to want to do is if this is global system numerics big integer, the way that we Right, we're going to have to put in a read big integer. Okay. And then on the reader here, we're going to need to put an extension method on. So we're going to need a public big integer, read big integer. And the way we do this is we're going to say here return new big integer self read byte. But that's, we want read write array. And then we can do this as an expression body. No, I don't want to do that. And so we're using this extension method here to read out the int length and then do this. Now we could technically inline this. And instead of the build helper doing read big integer and doing this, to me, that's a job for the CLR to figure out, should it inline this? Because we could put that code right here. But I think it makes more sense to do this. And then on the writer, we want a public void write big integer value. And so we're going to say here self.write two byte array. Yeah, see, it wants the expression body for member, but this is not the one we want. So we need to have a var bytes, not types. And then what we want here is bytes.length bytes. And so what this one does is it calls that one at the top. which is exactly what we want. We want to be able to put the length there so that when we come to the reader, we're able to use read byte array, which will read the length out and then read the bytes. That's what it returns. We can pass that into a big integer. Okay. So I should have right big integer async. So what I want to have here is var number is equal to a new a big integer dot parse. Just put a bunch of numbers in here. Culture info. Okay. And now we want to write out the number. Okay. And so now we want to read from the stream we want to get var number buffer is equal to number dot byte count. Actually, hold on just one sec. Yeah, that's just, we want it to be to a byte array. Okay. And so the number of bytes that we should have got is the length here. So we want to read it. Why am I making this so complicated for reading? I think because it probably told me, oh, you want to be able to do something as a that's async friendly. But now we should have, yeah, we don't need to do that. We should be able to say that a new big integer that should be equal to and then we don't need the enter multiple scope, right? Did that work? Nope, that failed miserably. Oh, I know why. Because we don't need to do this. What we're storing is right, we're storing the number first. Forgot about that. So that gets us our length. Yep, now it passes. Fine. Okay. And then we do the read side as well. Jason, what's the difference? To make it a really short answer, and I'll try to make it as succinct as I possibly can. Visual Studio is Windows only. That's one thing. Visual Studio has been around, God, at least 25 years at this point. And arguably maybe even a little bit more, because Visual Studio had kind of like its derivation from parts of Visual C++, Visual Basic, the IDEs, all these other tools, like I think Visual InterDev. There are all these pieces and parts of tools that they kind of, I think, at some point merged into this concept called Visual Studio. And so that's been around for a long time. VS Code, I don't remember when it first came out, but it's basically a fork of Electron, if I understand right. It's primarily, well, not primarily, it's cross-platform, so it works on any machine. It's meant to be, I mean, you can do development on it, you can do debugging in it. It's kind of meant more to be for like the textural changes. Like I use it a lot for just editing or changing text. I don't actually use it for, you can use it to build and run C# if you want. There's a C# dev kit for it, and there's tons of stuff for other languages. I've just been doing some stuff recently at work for PowerShell, and there's a PowerShell extension for it. So that makes it a little bit easier to do like syntax highlighting and letting me know, like PowerShell has a strong notion of verbs for all of its commands that you build, functions, and it will yell at you if you're not following the standard conventions. So there's stuff like that that's helpful. So if that helps. It may not help. Probably doesn't help. So VS Code is lightweight. Yes and no. I mean, it's got a lot of power. There's no doubt about that. So okay, so if I say here, if I get my number here, and then I write number, because we have an extension method for it now, so we're kind of cheating, but we have a test that makes sure that works. What we're trying to say is read big integer. Is that equal to? And let's change that to be value. Yeah, it does. Okay, cool. So yes, we should be able to just stick in right now. Hopefully. Because we have this value type builder. Yeah, I was like, numerics, big integer. We should just be able to say right, because now we have an extension method that works for that, and that should just work. So that's not what I wanted to do just yet. I don't want to do the integration test just yet. I want to do the integer. But now we need using system numerics. And we don't need it here, that's right, but this has to be global system numerics big integer, and then here when we do the read, we're going to say read big integer. Same thing down here. Global system numerics big integer, and then down here we can say read big integer. Does that work? One passed, one failed. Okay, what failed? Let's read property big. Jeez, I keep forgetting. Wait, whoa, 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 hold on. That ain't right. It should be doing... should be doing here, if I'm reading this correctly, in the set state. What we actually got was just big integer, but it should be that. Oh, that's right. We have to handle it differently. If build reader, build writer. Yeah, yeah. No, wait. That's the... What's interesting is that it did do it correctly up here, right? Because this test works just fine. This one is just wrong because it's not including the for the nullable. We should be getting fully qualified name here, right? Oh, that's why. Because it doesn't know. I forgot to add it here. That's my fault. Ah, they all pass. Good, 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 good. Whew. If you want to do... correct code, you got to write tests that are correct. Who knew? If there's one thing I want to get across to everybody, whoever watches my videos, is please write tests. That is like my number one thing out of anything I do of all my streams, is for all that is good in the world, please just it helps so much. They all passed. All right. So we've got the half type. We've got the big integer type, but the int128 and the uint128 types are a little suspect at this point. I know there's 16 bits in length, but it's unclear to me as to how do you pull those two values out so that you could use them to serialize and deserialize. So I need to spend some time figuring out how to actually do that, because there didn't seem to be a obvious way off the top of my head. So I'm going to leave that for the stream for next time. Whenever I do stream, I'm going to need to get to my day job. So the next time I do a random code stream, hopefully I'll have somewhat of a solution done, and then I might also, so it doesn't take too long to implement it, and then I want to go back to that. I'm still hung up on the big integer two-string thing I did in Spackle, because I want to see if using a string create actually is faster than using the interpolated string. I don't think it will be, but I want to try that out as well. So that is all for now. I want to thank everybody who's been watching, either now, live, or in the future. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I would really appreciate it. And if you have subscribed, appreciate you for doing that. I am going to be doing a control stream this afternoon starting around 4 or 4:30. I finished the game on Tuesday night, but I have the is that Foundation DLC to do. So I'm going to be doing that in the next couple of streams. So that will be this afternoon. But for now, I am done with this stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.